That's the same idea, that we are comforting, that we are helping, that we are encouraging, okay? And so as we think about what God wants us as His children to be doing, He wants us to be people who are concerned about the welfare of the people around us and comfort them and help them in that way, okay? Now, in what ways do we comfort other people? Well, today I want us to focus especially upon the words that we say. Are words powerful? Yes, all right? All right, now, I'm not going to ask for a show of hands this morning, but I want to just ask you this question. Many of us are up in years a little bit in the auditorium class today. Can you remember something someone said to you 30 years ago? Can you remember that? I can remember a specific conversation I had back in, I guess it would have been 1999. This is 2023, so that's how many years ago? That's 24 years ago, okay? I can remember something someone said to me then. I don't remember how old I exactly was, but I can remember my uncle saying something very positive to me in my teenage years. I can remember those exact words that he used. Are y'all like me, or am I kind of the anomaly there? Can y'all remember things people have told you years and years ago? I'm not talking about things, we struggle to remember what was told to us yesterday, right? But we can remember sometimes the exact words that someone spoke to us years and years ago. Now, I believe that is a testament to the power of words, right? To how words can impact us, both in a good way and a negative way. And so when we think about comforting other people, one of the things that we can use is our words. Now, I want us to flip over to Ephesians 4:29 for a moment and remind ourselves kind of the goal of our words. And I kind of use this passage more than any other to talk about our language and what we should be seeking for and what we should be seeking to avoid, just in a general idea. All right, verse number 29 of Ephesians 4. All right, and by the way, this is under the heading of the life of the new man or new woman in Jesus Christ. That's what you're supposed to put on as a Christian, all right? So in the things that Paul writes here by inspiration, verse 29, he says, "Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as is good for building up, as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear." So there's 4 ideas here that you see. Number 1, don't let corrupting talk come out of your mouths. The word corrupting means literally rotten. Literally rotten. All right, have you ever been around someone, and maybe it was you that was that someone that just spewed out language that was rotten to the core? It was filthy and disgusting and things of that nature? Well, Paul says, now that may have been the way you lived prior to obeying the gospel, but you're a new man, you're a new woman in Jesus Christ, and so you need to try your best to stop that flow of corrupting language coming out of your mouth. So number 1, we need to get rid of any type of rotten speech in our life, any type of speech that's going to be bad, and that is going to cover a litany of things if you will think about it. Number 2, we're to use language that is going to build up versus what? All right, versus tearing down, okay? So we are to use language that's going to build up rather than tear down. Now, that doesn't mean that we cannot ever offer criticism and can never, have to rebuke or reprove someone else because of something that's going on in their life. But generally speaking, our language needs to be building up. And even when we think about something like criticism, what should the purpose of criticism be? Should be for the purpose of ultimately building up, right? Not for tearing down. We don't criticize just to tear down. We do it for the higher motive there of building up. And so our speech should be such that it is going to build up and encourage. All right, number 3. We need to use speech that fits the occasion. That fits the occasion, okay? If you're married or have been married, you know that sometimes there are words that may be true, but they may be spoken at just the wrong time. Natalie knows in my life of when those wrong times are. I know when those wrong times are for her to talk about those kind of things. Things may be true, they may be right, but they may not fit the occasion. They may not be at the right time. And so we need to try to have that better timing in our life. And then number 4, we want people who we speak to be recipients of grace. Grace means unmerited favor, and that means that we speak to them in such a way that maybe in our minds we think, well, maybe they don't deserve that. But the fact of the matter is none of us deserve probably anything that we get from the hand of God in those ideas. So when we think about it, we want them to walk away feeling as if they have had bestowals or blessings of grace in their life. And so when you look at all of these things, number 1, we want to steer away from any language that's untoward or improper, any rotten language. We want our words to be encouraging. We want people to walk away saying, that was just what I needed to hear. It's the right time, the right content. And then we want our words to leave people with a very positive and good impression. All right, now that's a very lofty goal for our speech, right? And one of the things that I can't help but notice is this. When you look at these things, especially the second and third ideas here, we need to think about what we say, right? All right. I've been around people that believe that whatever it is that comes to your mind, you need to just go ahead and spill it out. That idea of just brutal honesty, the Bible doesn't, condone that. The Bible is going to say in so many ways, you need to stop and think, okay? If you're going to consider, how can my words build up rather than tear down, I need to probably think about what it is I'm going to say. If I'm going to have speech that's going to fit the occasion, I need to stop and think, what's the occasion and what's the proper thing to say, what's the proper thing not to say, and maybe even say nothing at all, okay? And so that's the goal, if you think generally about our speech. And so as we think about the power of our speech, the goal of our speech, that's a lot about what the New Testament says. Now, as we think about those goals of Ephesians chapter 4 and 29, I want us to think about some things that are appropriate to say, okay, to people who are going through difficult times, and especially grief and things of that nature. And we think especially today about those who have lost loved ones and things that are appropriate to say. All right, let's talk about a few of those. All right, what is maybe the very best thing that you can say to people who have lost loved ones? What do you think? All right, I love you. That is a very deep, but yet simple thing to say, isn't it? I love you. I love you. That means that I care about you. I have your interest at heart, especially when we think about the way the Bible uses the term love. That's a very powerful emotion right there. It is, I love you and I care about you. Love's kind of a catch-all for a lot of other ideas. When you say, well, I care about you or I'm thinking about you, I love you kind of encapsulates a lot of those things. And so it's never a bad thing to say, I love you. And that says a lot to individuals. What are other things that we might say that might be helpful? All right, praying for you. All right. One of the things I'll talk about this morning in our worship hour is the inability that we have to control things a lot of times in life. Do we have the power to take away the loss of someone's life? And by the way, grief comes because of loss. It doesn't matter what the loss is. When there is loss in a person's life, there is grief, okay? I used to not understand some of those things until a seminar I was part of many years ago, when I understood that anything that is perceived as loss, then there's grieving. If you are fired from your job, what do you have? You have loss. You're going to grieve, right? If you have a pet that dies, right? That's a loss. You're going to grieve that to some degree or another. Loss brings about grieving, okay? And so when we think about loss and grieving, we don't have the physical power to take away those repercussions, those effects, any consequences. We don't have that physical power, but we do have the ability to pray. And from James chapter 5 and verse 16, how is prayer described there? It is very powerful, very powerful. The root word there of powerful is the word we get dynamite from in our language today. All right, there's a lot of things I can't do to help in your loss, but there's one thing I can do, and that's pray. And God tells me that that is a very, very powerful and helpful thing to do. All right, so I love you. I'm praying for you. What else? All right, I'm here for you, okay? All right, and some of the ideas of I love you kind of carries with that, but that's tangibly stated. I'm here for you. And this is one of those things, it's very difficult to do. A lot of times we will say, if I can do anything, what? Let me know. How many times do people let us know? A lot of times we just don't get anything there. That's hard. And look, I don't want to encourage you to stop saying that, because that's a very heartfelt sentiment, and I think is another of one of the good things to say. But I'm here for you. If you can depend on me, Galatians 6:2 says we are to bear one another's burdens, a little bit different context, but again, it's a situation where somebody's in a tough spot. If I can help you, then lean on me and depend on me. Now, Natalie tells me sometimes when we are having some type of discussion and talk at home, that, she doesn't need me to fix it. She needs me to what? Listen, okay? All right? That's, as men, sometimes we want to fix everything, right? That's, you tell us a problem, we want to go to work and fix those things and those kind of things. Sometimes people just need to listen to someone, okay? And when you say, I'm here for you, that kind of goes a long way. I'm here for you to tell me things. I'm here to be a shoulder to cry on, to be someone to depend on. If there's something physically that I can do, I'm here for that. I am here for you. There's a lot that goes along with that. Sydney. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And look, I mean, all of us go through certain things that we can't have anyone do those things for us. When Mom has been in the hospital for the last couple of years at various times, people would say, hey, look, I would come, I will sit with her and give you a break and things of that nature. But what happens when the doctor comes and you're needing to ask a lot of questions and you're not there? Well, there are some things it's really, really hard for anybody else to do for you. But it is meaningful for someone to say, I'm here for you. If there's something I can do, then, depend on me, lean on me, whatever I can. I'm not alone. When somebody says, I'm here for you, then I'm not alone. All right, what else? And I guess one of the things, too, we think is we always have to say something right one way or the other. Sometimes it's not what we say, it's kind of what we do, and it's our actions that speak loudest, right? Sometimes just giving someone a hug and not saying anything at all might be the most appropriate, right? Does that speak? Does that say something? All right, and I want you to kind of think about Job's three friends, right? Go back to the Old Testament story of Job. All right, everything was good, right, for the first period of time because what? They didn't say anything. They just sat and consoled him, right? Obviously, Job's grief was great. They could see that. And so for the first period of time that they are there, okay, it says in Job chapter 2, verses 11 and following, now when Job's three friends heard of all the evil that had come upon him, they came each from their own place. They made an appointment together to come and show him sympathy and comfort him. And when they saw him from a distance, they did not recognize him. And they raised their voices and wept, and they tore their clothes and sprinkled dust on their head toward heaven. And they sat with him, now notice this, on the ground 7 days and 7 nights. For a whole week they sit with Job. And no one spoke a word to him, for they saw that his suffering was very great. All right, question. Do you believe that Job was comforted by the presence of his friends there? All right. What happened when they began to speak? What happened to that comfort? It kind of went out the window, didn't it? Because basically they come and they're going to basically point a finger and say, Job, whose fault is it that you suffered like this? It's your fault. You need to give up your pride and you need to admit that you've done something or some things that are wrong in God's eyes. You need to take your medicine, if you will. And so as long as they were silent, Job would have been comforted. But it's when they began to speak that the comfort goes out the window, okay? All right, so sometimes it may be the things we do as much as what we say. And I think that's very helpful in that regard. All right, so we've got about 7 minutes left in class. Let's kind of turn our attention to the other side of the coin. I want us to think about some things. If those are some things that are appropriate to say, what are some things that are inappropriate to say? All right, let's cover a few of those. All right, one thing I think that it's very inappropriate for us to say is, there's a reason for everything. There's a reason for everything. All right, do we believe as Christians that there are reasons behind things that happen in this world? Do we? Or did God kind of, like a clock of old, did he wind up the world and just set it down and step away from it? Is God involved in the things of this world? Is he involved in our life? Is he involved even in the circumstances of our life? And are there God's purposes behind those things? The answer is yes, okay? But this probably comes under the heading of, it may be true, but it's just probably not the time to hear that. When we are grieving and when we are going through loss in difficult times, our thinking is not like it normally is. To try to have to rationalize, well, if there's a reason for this, what is the reason for this? It's just one of those things, probably our minds are not quite at the point we can comprehend that and really do anything with that. That probably is not going to be as helpful as we think it may be, okay? And hey, here's the thing. Sometimes we can say things that someone might turn around and ask us a question too. If I go up to someone who has lost a loved one and I say, well, there's a reason for everything. What if they turn around and say, well, can you tell me what the reason is for this? What do you think I'm going to say? What would I say? I don't really know what I would say, right? So one of the things that we probably want to stay away from is saying things that are illy timed, that they may be true, but they may not necessarily be a good time for someone to have that. This is something that is said sometimes to those who have lost a child, who have multiple children. Well, at least you've got maybe 2 other children. All right, tell me why that's not appropriate. Yeah. I've got 3 boys at home. I love all 3 of them. If I lose one of my sons, there's very little consolation in knowing I have 2 sons left. Now, is that encouraging? Yes, to some degree, but I am grieving the loss of somebody that is special to me. No one can take the place of someone in our life. There's a void there. And there will always be that void there. There's no replacing, there's no covering over. And so, again, I think that maybe what someone is trying to do is to help us see the sunshine behind the clouds. But again, where is our mental capacity to understand it? All right, a third idea that I believe that sometimes we say that may be very ill-spoken is God needed him or her more than we did. All right, can you show me Bible for that? That's I think that's an idea that we need to always think about. Can you show me that? And you know, I've heard before, I've heard someone actually say to someone who was an excellent gardener, well, God had a garden that he wanted to plant in heaven, and so that's why he took that individual. Where do you find that in Scripture? That God arbitrarily takes people for his pleasure and for his reasons in that regard. That's not really the character of God that we see. God is not a selfish God and things of that nature. And by the way, when someone that we dearly love, we lose them and they are in that void in life, it almost pits us against God, doesn't it? If God needed them more than me, then, you know, well, I mean, does that mean he doesn't love me? There are a lot of things that kind of come behind that. All right, number 4, I know how you feel. I know how you feel. Tell me what's wrong with that one. All right, what if I have been through it? Okay, it's not the same. We're all different. We're all different. I had a lady that I was talking to this week, and she had lost her husband back a few months ago. And she told me, she said, Carrie, she said, I can tell you nobody understands what someone goes through when they lose a spouse. And she said, even those who have lost a spouse don't understand it entirely. Now, there's a closer gap that you know, there's a closer measure. That gap is narrowed, if you will, if you've kind of gone through that situation, right? But until you have gone through it, it's very hard for you to empathize and understand even the depths of it. But even then, every person's different. Every person's different. The way you handle something is different than the way I handle it. And so, you know, it may be one thing to say, you know, I have suffered that same loss. I've suffered a very similar loss. That may be more of a true statement there. But to say, I know how you feel, that's a little different idea. The uniqueness by which we've been created, that's very dangerous, I believe, for us to say. Number 5, well, it was just his or her time to go. What about that? Again, show me Bible. Now, do all of us have an appointment with death? Hebrews 9:27, and it's appointed for man to die what? Once, but after this, the judgment, right? We have that appointment, but I don't know in the Bible that you read about a specific time and circumstance that someone is supposed to depart this world. And again, that's one of those things that if we're not very careful, we're speaking on behalf of God, saying, well, we knew it was this time or that time, things of that nature. I've heard some people say to someone else, well, you need to be strong for everyone else. You know, Galatians 6:2 says, I need to help bear people's burdens, not place more burdens on them, okay? All right, you need to be strong so that you can help everybody else. Well, who's going to help you? I think that's the way people hear that, and that's a very difficult thing, you know, for us to kind of go through. And then sometimes, much later, someone might say, well, you need to be over this by now. What's wrong with that? It goes back to the uniqueness, okay? Very quickly, here are the stages of grief: shock, denial, guilt, pain, anger, bargaining, depression, and then finally acceptance. Some people go through that in 3 months. Some people it takes 3 years. Everybody is unique and different, okay? And we need to be very careful about judging. All right, let's sum up something I believe. When we talk about comforting and encouraging people through our words, James chapter 3 tells us this: we are going to make mistakes. We are never going to always say the right thing at the right time in every situation. James tells us every one of us is going to make a mistake when it comes to our speech, okay? So if you've ever said the wrong thing and said inappropriate things that didn't fit Ephesians 4:29, don't beat yourself up too much, because we're all in that same boat. We're all going to make mistakes in this area. But our goal should be to, as much as possible, do what Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 29 says about our speech. And that includes times when we have an opportunity to comfort those who have suffered loss. All right, I hope that the class has been helpful today, and especially for those of you that are suffering today and going through a very difficult valley. Our thoughts and our prayers are with you. We love you, and we're thinking about you during this time. You're dismissed.